Hello all. I decided I would start doing some of the videos reviewing the monthly disc releases as I was doing last summer. It has been a while. And there were a few Kino releases for the month of March 2024 that I've had a chance to look at, and I just thought I would talk about those. One of which, the first one we'll talk about is Changing Lanes. There we go. Let's get that. There we go. Changing Lanes, directed by Roger Michel. And this is a 4K release of Changing Lanes. It was a 2002 release from Paramount. I saw it when it originally came out. It's an interesting film. Ben Affleck and Samuel L. Jackson star in the film as two strangers who meet through an unfortunate car accident. And Ben Affleck he's a lawyer, he has an important case he needs to get to, and he just leaves his personal information with Samuel L. Jackson's character. That's not enough for him to satisfy him because he's got a child custody hearing, and so he wants to do things the right way and call the cops, and it leads to an escalating war of them one-upsmanship, I guess you would say. Hadn't seen this film since it originally came out, and it does have some really good acting on display. It's very well directed, co-scripted by Michael Tolkien, who was he did the Player for Robert Altman in 1992, and I think he directed his own film, The New Age, a couple of years later, which I think made the best of list for Gene Siskel the year of its release, I believe. But anyway, this is a really solid transfer for Changing Lanes. And you get an audio commentary by Roger Michel. Unfortunately, he has passed away since this film was released. He died a couple of years ago, really fairly young, I would say. But you get the Making of Changing Lanes featurette, the writer's perspective featurette, deleted and extended scenes. So you get some interesting stuff there. If you're a fan of Changing Lanes, it's certainly worth a revisit after all of these years for me. This next one is one that I had not actually seen. I had heard about it, and I was interested in it, basically because it was written by Pat Proft, who co-wrote the Naked Gun films, and he had a long association with the Zucker brothers, as it were. And I thought, well, this might be interesting because I kind of respond to his sense of humor. And the Zucker brothers, who did Airplane, of course, Naked Gun, as I just mentioned. This is Brain Donors, and it is I guess you would call it a quasi-remake of A Night at the Opera, the Marx Brothers film from 1935. That's considered to be one of their best. Now, you know you're really stepping out on a limb when you try to remake a Marx Brothers film. That's a tall order there, ladies and gentlemen. But I wasn't sure if I was going to like this, and I wasn't quite responding to some of the humor in the early goings-on. But as it went on, I have to admit I laughed a few times, and there's some interesting performances in the film from John Turturro and stand-up comic Bob Nelson, who I used to see on HBO specials in the 80s. He is in this as well. It's directed by Dennis Dugan, who did a lot of the Adam Sandler films that I'm not really a big fan of, I must admit. So that, I think if Pat Proft had directed it, it might have been just maybe a hair better. Nothing against Dennis Dugan there. But nevertheless, this is an interesting film, and I kind of sort of like it, to be quite honest. It made me laugh a couple of times, and what else can I say? So this is, you get an audio commentary by the director. I don't know if you can see that. Let's hold that up there. An audio commentary by the director, moderated by the film critic and author Lee Gambon, an online friend of mine that I've interviewed several times. He's a really good source for information with some of these films, and just a really good person all around, and a great writer too. If you've not had a chance to read any of his film history books. Audio commentary by the film journalist Stacey Lane Wilson as well, and a theatrical trailer. Nice transfer, I must add. And this is from a new HD master from the 4K scan of the original 35mm camera negative. The President's Analyst is a film that I had on DVD, had it for many, many years, never got around to watching it, actually. And so I heard it was coming out on Blu-ray. I was very excited to finally get around to seeing it, and it's a satire about what would happen if the President of the United States had an analyst, and the analyst had a lot of deep, dark secrets about the President that he knew, and what would happen if he decided to stop treating the President, and people were trying to get that information from him. It sounds like an interesting premise, all right, but the humor and the satire just did not connect with me at all, I must admit. It's a beautifully shot film by William A. Fraker, who also shot Rosemary's Baby, among many other things, and Exorcist 2 is another one of his films that I think he did. Even though that's not a great film, he did a terrific job lensing it, I will say. So this new edition of The President's Analyst at least gave me a chance to see it. Unfortunately, I can't say I'm a fan of it, and it's really odd. The first half hour, maybe 45 minutes, is about the president and his relationship with his analyst, and or basically about the analyst. The president's never really actually seen here. And then the last half of the film becomes a spy caper of some sorts, and there's rumors that part of this film was that there was an unfinished third Flint film. You know, James Coburn was doing those James Bond parodies, In Like Flint and Our Man Flint, and there was a rumor that there was a third partially filmed one that never got completed and that they used some of that footage here. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it does feel kind of out of sync with the first half of the film, because he's got spies trying to kill him and he's running for his life, running here, running there. I don't know, it just didn't make the grade for me. This was a real misfire, but if you are a fan of The President's Analyst, you're really going to enjoy this new transfer. And it also contains an audio commentary by a film historian and writer, Julie Kurgo, another online friend of mine who also does excellent work. She used to pin the booklets that you would find in the Twilight Time Blu-ray releases and did great essays there. Also joining her on the commentary is filmmaker and writer Peter Hancock. Audio commentary by the novelist and the critic Tim Lucas, another online friend. So, The President's Analyst, there's the back of it, in case you want to see it, from Kino Lorber Studio Classics. And the last one of these releases is The Lincoln Conspiracy. Yes, The Lincoln Conspiracy is a film that I had a 16mm print of at some point in my life, because it was not available on DVD, or I don't think it was ever commercially released on VHS. There were some bootlegs running around. This is one of those Sun Classic Pictures. That was the studio that was based out of Utah that did a lot of these pseudo-documentaries like The Mysterious Monsters, which was narrated by Peter Graves, and The Amazing World of Psychic Phenomena is another one that was narrated by Raymond Burr. Beyond and Back was another one, In Search of Noah's Ark, In Search of Historic Jesus. I saw a lot of these in the films in the theater when they came out. In our small town, they came fast and furiously as they were. And I remember quite vividly the Lincoln Conspiracy coming to our local theater. It's a very talky film. There's a lot of scenes of men in rooms. But it's an interesting, the actual story at the heart of the film about a possible conspiracy that may have been happening behind the scenes to eliminate the President of the United States at that time. It's an interesting story if you don't know it. I don't know how much of it is actually factual or any of that, but this has been a very hard film to come by. A lot of people were picking up bootlegs for years, and now it's of course readily available on YouTube. But if you haven't seen The Lincoln Conspiracy, this might be worth, and you really love those, or if you dig, I should say, those 70s pseudo-documentaries, which I do because I'm a child of the 70s, this was hit my sweet spot, even though I've interviewed the director of the film before, and he admitted that it's not a the best film that you'll ever see. He did the best he could at the time. He didn't, he was a fairly new director and still learning his craft, as it were. He went on to direct episodes of Star Trek later on, and the horror film The Boogans, which was recently released in 4K by Kino Studio Classics. But The Lincoln Conspiracy, I hope that people will buy this and that it will lead to them releasing more of the Sun Classic Pictures documentaries that I just mentioned, Beyond and Back, In Search of Noah's Ark, and so on and so forth. The Lincoln Conspiracy, you get an audio commentary by that director, James L. Conway, and it's moderated by the film historian Howard S. Berger. So those are 4 of the Kino Lorber Studio Classics titles that I received for the month of March, and just wanted to get the word out and share my thoughts here on the Adam's Corner YouTube channel, which is a supplement to my podcast. My podcast, Adam's Corner, I put up a new episode every week. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all those type of places that you get your podcast. As always, I appreciate the fan base that I do have. There are a few of you out there, and I appreciate you, and you know who you are. So until next time, keep digging those discs, my friends, and you know who you are.